It happened 6 years ago, when I was in my junior year at high school, that I saw Sarah Nell Workman for the first time and, not to be sentimental, I liked the girl. I liked her so much, in fact, that I would go to the library and read the cards in the back of the books to find the ones she had borrowed. I would take those out and read them carefully, including one called Needlepoint and Needlecraft. "It's for my sister," I said hoarsely to the librarian, who was looking at me curiously. There were some penciled notes in the margins about hemstitching, and whether Sarah made these notes or not, I don't know. At the time, I liked to imagine that she did, and I read them over and over. 2 skeins of black, 2 orange, 1 yellow, and the tulip stencil. Mother's Day, 17 days. But when you're 16, you can't keep reading marginal notes over and over. At least I couldn't. And so the time came that I decided to ask Sarah for a date. That day at school, I couldn't find her by herself, and juniors in high school don't just up and ask a girl for a date in front of everybody. At home that night, I went out into the hall where the phone was and shut the door behind me. I wrote Sarah's number on the pad and then one sentence. "Sarah, Jezebel is on Friday night, and I was just wondering if you'd like to see it with me." That sounded casual and easy enough to say, but when I heard the operator ringing the number, I got excited and crumpled the paper in my hand. For a second, I considered hanging up, but then someone said, "Hello?" "Oh," I said. "May I speak to Sarah Workman?" "This is she," she said, rather impatiently it seemed. "Oh, Sarah," I said. This is Dave." "Yes," she said. "Do you know what our history assignment is for tomorrow?" I asked hopelessly. "Just a minute," she said. She got her book and gave me the assignment. I thanked her and hung up. Then I untwisted the phone wire and went back to my room and brewed. About an hour later, I decided that the thing to do was to jump up suddenly without thinking, rush into the hall, and phone her before I had a chance to become flustered. I jumped up quickly, but then I turned back to the dresser and brushed my hair before rushing out of the room. When Sarah answered the phone, I blurted out, "Would you like to go to the show with me Friday night? This is Dave." "Well, I don't know," Sarah said very slowly and coolly. "What's on?" "I don't know," I said. "I thought maybe we'd just go mess around uptown." "What?" she asked. "I mean, I don't know," I said. "Lucy Bell or something like that." I really couldn't remember. "Jezebel," she said. "Bette Davis? Yeah, I'd love to see it." "Okay," I said. "Goodbye." The next day, I avoided meeting Sarah alone. In the line at the cafeteria, she leaned against 2 people and said to me, "That was you last night, wasn't it?" "Yeah," I said. She settled down for a moment. I was afraid that she was going to laugh, but she didn't. Friday night at 8 o'clock, when we were leaving Sarah's house, Mr. Workman, who looked like John L. Lewis, asked, "Who's driving?" "I am," I said. "You got a license?" "Yes, sir," I said. "Well," he hollered as we went down the walk, "just see to it that you got Sarah back here safe, and before 11 o'clock. "Yes, sir," I said. 11 o'clock, Sarah," he screamed. She was embarrassed, but she hollered back, "Yes, sir." At the theater, we had to stand in line, and when finally we did get seats, they were in the 3rd row. My neck was hurting before the newsreel was over, but Sarah didn't seem to mind looking straight up at the screen. When the picture was almost over, she caught me looking at her. "What's the matter?" she whispered. "Headache," I said. "I think it's from looking straight." "Shh," she whispered. On the screen, Bette Davis was risking death by yellow fever to be with her man and nurse him. Sarah was very quiet when we came out of the show. As we walked down Main Street, I said, "Do you think she should have stayed with him? She probably caught yellow fever, too." "It's not a matter of what you should or shouldn't do," Sarah said. "For when you love a man, nothing can tear you away." "Good gosh," I said. Above us, a neon light flickered off and on and died as though it would explode. We stood in front of Schaefer's drugstore for a minute. It was 10:15 then, and Sarah was worried about getting home. "Just something to drink," she said. "We haven't time to eat." She ordered a chocolate milk, and I wanted one too, but I thought it would look kind of sophisticated to order something for MZ headache. I couldn't remember ammonia and Coke, so I asked the waiter what he had for a headache. "Aspirin, Epsom salts, lithobromide, anything you want," he said. "Bring me a lithobromide," I said, trying to sound weary, "and a Coke." "Still hurts?" Sarah asked softly. I smiled at her without answering. John Bowerman and 2 other seniors came in and took the booth next to ours. All of the booths and tables were filling with the crowd from the movie. The waiter brought the order. My Coke was in one glass, 2 lithobromide tablets were in the bottom of an empty glass, and there was a big glass of water. I'd never taken a lithobromide, and I didn't know that the tablets were supposed to be dropped into a glass of water where they would fizz while dissolving. I just shook the tablets out into my hand, popped them into my mouth, and swallowed them one at a time as though they were aspirin. Then I drank half the Coke while Sarah tasted her milkshake. Before I had time to say anything, the lithobromide started bubbling noisily in my stomach. I drank the rest of the Coke and tried to pretend that nothing was happening. Sarah put down her glass and stared at me, terrified. I sounded like somebody gargling under a barrel. "It always does this," I said bravely. But by then the rumblings from the mixture were too ominous to be ignored by me or the people in the other booths. Everyone was staring at my stomach. "Everybody's looking at you," Sarah whispered. She was so red that I was afraid she was going to cry. "Sounds like somebody churning buttermilk," John Bowerman said, coming around to our booth. "He's effervescing," the waiter announced happily to the astonished customers. "Just listen to him fizz!" "Sarah," I said, and I was going to tell her to get me out of there, but I was afraid to open my mouth to say anything else. The rumbling just sounded deeper when I did, like drumming on a hollow log. "Doc Schaefer!" John Bowerman called out when Sarah told him what I had done. Doc Schaefer climbed over the prescription counter. "Stand back," he said to the crowd that was gathering around our booth. They stepped back as though they expected me to explode. "It's nothing serious," Doc Schaefer said. "Get his head lower than his stomach. Give me a hand with him." "He says it always does this," Sarah said. "That's pretty hard to believe," Doc said, as John Bowerman and the 2 seniors picked me up and carried me to the prescription counter. They stretched me out and let my head hang off with my mouth open. A dogfight couldn't have attracted more attention. Doc Schaefer brought a wet towel from the back of the drugstore. Sarah stood beside me and rubbed my forehead with it. "Sarah," I said, and I suppose now I must have sounded rather melodramatic to the other people. "You won't love me, will you?" "Oh, my goodness," Sarah said. "What time is it?" 10 till 11, John Bowerman said. Sarah dropped the wet towel in my face. "I've got to be home by 11, she said. "I'll take you," John said. I took the towel off my face in time to see them stopping by the booth for Sarah's pocketbook. She didn't even look back at me. The 4 or 5 people who were standing by me went back to their tables. I lay quietly on the counter and watched the light above swaying gently in the noisy room. Gradually, 2 by 2, the people left, and the noise of the dishes being stacked grew quieter and quieter. I watched the waiter turn the chairs upside down on the tables and felt sorry for him and for myself and for the whole pitiful world.